MTDCNC, bringing you the latest engineering news via video media.
Nick, we've met today to talk about automation. We hear lots of it on our travels here at MTD. And let's start with an original equipment manufacturer. Why would they invest in automation?
Ultimately, automation is about increasing your output for your investment. So the classic statement, sweat your assets, not your people. If you consider that anecdotally, and I've spoken to a lot of customers now, if you take a twin pallet horizontal, if you get much more than 40% efficiency in terms of spindle cutting metal out of that, you're doing very well. Stick an automation system on, you can take that to in excess of 90. So why wouldn't you automate?
Okay, fair point. But what happens if I understand if I've got a row of 10 or 20 machines, an operator getting paid £10 an hour on each possibly. But what happens if I've only got 2 or 3 machines?
The same argument applies. If you've got 2 or 3 machines, you've got spare capacity. So, admittedly, if you've only got the capacity to fill 8 hours, there's no point in spending more money. But if you're looking to utilise extra capacity and you've got the order book and you've got the work to fill it, then you've got the choice. You can either buy more machines or you can automate the machines you've got. And I'm sure as we develop this conversation, you'll begin to understand why actually automation is a more cost-effective solution than buying more machines.
Okay, and how about low-volume manufacturers? So maybe, I understand again, 100,000, it's a no-brainer. What happens if I'm making 5 or 6 or 10, 20 off? Every time I do a new job, I've got to take it to a CMM, that machine's not cutting metal, is it?
Okay, so the traditional understanding of automation is what you probably see in something like the motor industry, where you've got the same job being done all the time, and generally you'll have a robot or some other form of automation that literally allows your machine to do the same thing time and time again, 24 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week. The big challenge has been, how do you automate flexible manufacturing? Because people want to have flexible manufacturing because they want to have smaller batches, they want to have less money tied up in stock, work in progress, raw material, etc., etc., etc. But of course, the downside of flexible manufacturing is that you spend more time breaking down your fixtures on your machines, and the machines stand still. So you've got that area where you've got the downside of poor efficiency of your machines, but less cash tied up in work in progress, etc., etc. What the automation of flexible manufacturing allows you to do is it allows you to combine the benefits of small batches, quick turnaround, low work in progress, reduced cash tied up, but by automating it, and we can talk about how that happens later on, you actually still maintain high percentage spindle efficiency. And that's why, if anything, automation of flexible manufacturing probably produces bigger dividends than automation of single component high volume.
Okay, that's interesting. So what is dead time? We talk about dead time. What is dead time?
So if you take a traditional machine, a lot of the dead time will be, especially if you're doing small volume, each time you've completed your small volume of 5 or 10 components or whatever it may be, the machine stops, guy dives in, changes the fixture, puts the new fixture back on, does the first component, stops the machine, takes that component off to inspection for a first off inspection, then comes back, and you're just wasting phenomenal amounts of time. The second part is, how do you actually man your machine? During the day, less of a problem. Getting hold of people for night shift, more of a problem. Getting hold of people to do weekends, even bigger problem. Getting people to do bank holidays and Christmas, etc., 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 you are facing a major problem. And I think consistently now, every single customer that I talk to talks in terms of the difficulty of recruiting and hanging on to skilled labour. So the biggest challenge is, one, actually using your machine efficiently when you've got people there, but secondly, actually having some method of loading that machine in the nasty wee hours of the night. And of course, that's what automation does for you.
Yeah, I take that on board, Nick, but I've still got to take my first off and get it inspected, haven't I? So is that not downtime even with automation?
No, because you've got 5 or 6 pallets all queued up waiting to have things done to them. You send in your pallet that's now got your new component that you're machining for the first time. The machine machines the component, it comes back out again, and whilst you're taking that component off for first off inspection, we're quite happily sending in the pallets with the existing work that's been proven in the past. Machines quite happily chugging away, and you're doing all the sort of first off new component work, but while the machine is still doing, you know, what it's meant to be doing.
Can we automate the inspection?
If you want to. Certainly we are capable of including in our automated systems, everything from deburring, like that little robot that you had on one of your other videos. We can put CMMs into the system with feedback loops from the CMM back into the machine to change offsets of tooling, etc., etc., etc. We can put wash stations in. We can combine a situation where we might have our system linked to some milling machines, and then after the components come out, we could stick it in a lathe, or, you know, really, imagination is the only limiting factor for our automation systems.
I like that. But okay, so I walk into a futuristic factory, it's full of FASTEMS, not an operator in sight. So you've got 10, 20 machines, whatever. Yeah. What happens if your system goes down? I've got 20 machines not cutting metal. I'm in trouble.
Absolutely. And that I can understand why people are frightened of that. But let's put that in perspective, and I'll draw 2 analogies if I may. The first is, if you ever watch the news and you see some video of one of the car manufacturers, and the traditional one, of course, is that you see the shell of the car coming down the assembly line and robots diving in and spot welding and doing lots of other things. Very few of those operations are duplicated. So can you imagine that you could have upwards of 1,000 robots along this great big line? If any one of those robots stops, that line stops. If robot reliability was a serious concern, do you think car manufacturers would have robots on their lines? Now, I know that's robots. Pallet management is very similar. Pallet manipulation has been developed across a whole range of industries. No self-respecting warehouse that is a distribution centre for any of the chains of shops that we could all talk about. No self-respecting warehouse is not automated and doesn't have some kind of pallet management system. Pallet management has been around for 30 plus years, and it's now got to the point where the hardware is just not an issue. It works, it runs, people know how long a buzz bar or a component will last. It becomes part of the scheduled maintenance program. Reliability is not an issue.
Okay, and how many installations have FASTEMS got in the UK currently?
Oh, in the UK, we're getting on for 100 now. Globally, for pallet management systems, we've got well over 1,000, and robot applications, probably about 1,500.
So is it fair to say you're a leader in this technology?
The differentiator for us, because if I'm being absolutely honest, is lots of people can move pallets around, sure. And lots of people can make robots do things, absolutely. The differentiator for us is that we have spent hundreds of thousands of man-hours developing the software for scheduling and making pallets go in and out at the right time, and fine scheduling, and the ability to sort of answer and do things that most customers will often do manually, and we now do automatically as part of our system. The USP for us is our control software is head and shoulders above the competition.
Okay, I understand that, Nick, but if I'm an SME, a small subcontractor with maybe 2, 3, 4 machines, I'm not going to invest £500,000 in a system like that, so I'm going to buy another machine, aren't I?
I would argue that you wouldn't, and hear me through as I sort of develop the logic of this. If you consider that the cost of automation is arguably similar to the cost of a machine. So if you've got 2 or 3 machines and you can double their spindle efficiency, double their output, and you can do that for the cost of 1 more machine, what are you going to do? Are you going to buy 1 more machine to give yourself 4 times machine output, or are you going to automate the 3 machines and give yourself 6 times machine output? And personally, I see that as a no-brainer. That's money for old rope.
Okay, if I've got horizontal machining centres, and I put a finger in the air here and say approximately 150, 180,000 pounds for a reasonable horizontal machine, what's it going to cost me to automate the other 2? More than that, I would presume.
If you consider that entry-level automation for a horizontal machining centre, give or take, is 120,000 euros, so fraction under £100,000, then you have at least doubled, and we can argue the numbers on that. I mean, I'll give you some idea. I've talked to a number of customers, and when they actually analyse their machine efficiency, and we're not just talking about sitting in an office and looking up and saying, yeah, there's an operator standing there. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about when they actually analyse how much of the time their machines are cutting metal. Numbers vary between, I've heard as low as 28%, and I've heard as high as a little bit over 40%. Okay? If you assume with automation, we reliably get in excess of 90%, you can see that if you can automate a single machine for less than double the cost of the machine, your quid's in.
Yeah, I get that, but if it's low volume manufacturers, a subcontractor, I don't know what I'm going to be machining in a week's time, do I? It's probably a job I've never seen before. So do you really think you're going to achieve 80 or 90% efficiency when you don't know what job's coming through the door?
Well, bear in mind, all your building of fixtures on a pallet, all your, if you like, non-machining development time, you're doing while the machine is machining something else. So if you've got your pallet here and you're building up the fixture and you're testing that the component fits in it properly and all the sort of work associated with doing a component for the first time, you're doing that offline, so to speak, while the machine is quite happily chugging away with components that are already established.
Okay, if I flip it the other way, why wouldn't I invest in it? You tell me a type of company that shouldn't invest in automation.
The only 2 scenarios I can think of are, if you've only got 8 hours work, then it doesn't matter how much spare capacity you've got in that machine, you've nothing to put on it, have you? So if you've only got 8 hours work to do, frankly, you might as well have a machine and just run it through the day. It's when you start to have, when your order books start to increase, and you're beginning to say, what do I do? Do I take on a night shift? Do I buy a second machine? All those sort of questions about how do I increase my capacity, then you start to think automation. The only other scenario that I could think of, and this is a bit far-fetched, but you'll see where I'm coming from. If you have a vertical machining centre and it's an aluminium component, so there's no issues with tool life, and you've got a cycle time of 23 hours and it takes you 10 minutes to load your component, then you can see it's very, very easy to load the component in the middle of the day, switch the lights off, come back the next day at roughly the same time, take that one out, stick the next one in. And in that sort of situation, you're going to be achieving 95%, spindle efficiency. But I don't know many people who've got that luxury.
Yeah, sure, no, point taken. If I invest 100,000, 200,000, £1 million, what's the average return on my investment?
Average that we've calculated over probably the 1,000 or so systems that we've got. If you're talking about pallet management systems, you look for a payback in less than 2 years. And if you're talking about robot systems, they will generally pay for themselves in a year.
Okay, Nick, you've got 15 seconds to sell me automation. Go.
Excellent. Okay, Joe, very simple, significantly improved machine efficiency, significantly reduced dependence on labour. In fact, you get overtime on demand, and especially with the current skills gap that everyone is talking about, you reduce your dependency on people significantly. And then we start getting into the soft savings. reduced work in progress, improved quality, faster response time for customer orders. It just all falls into place.
No, well, thanks for your time today.
Brilliant. It's good to talk to you
I
again.
must admit I'm sold on automation.
Excellent. Thank you.
So if you want to find out more about automation, speak to the experts at FASTEMS.